Hi, good evening. Can you all hear me? Hi, can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, Wendell. Are you hearing me? I think you said yes. Okay. So I'm gonna do some revision of map work before the exam and also answer questions that you all may have. So let us do some work. Okay, great. All right, let me just pull up this. So 20 the Mapan map came for Unit 1 Geography, and it also came for the CSEC in June exam. So let's see if we can go through that map first. And I have a few questions that I can also answer from that map. So we should go through that since, right? Okay, Ciara, I'm going to share that map, or if you all have it already, you all could just pull it up so it would be easier for you all to see on your end. Right? Let's go through those questions that was given to me that you all sent in a group chat for me to answer. Aisha, I think it is in our group chat. The map is in our group chat. So you could open up that map. I could also try to see if it will open up here. Since you all have, I will share the map and see if it looks clear, but I know it usually is not very clear, right? So let me share the map. Let's see if it could show. All right, that's the map. I am not sure how clean you all are seeing it, but that's the map, right? This is the Mapan map. So let us look at some of the questions that they gave for this map previously. So study the map extract of Mapan, Jamaica. Describe the distribution of vegetation in the area of the map extract south of Nothing 41. I think some of these questions, um, it looks like it is more of a Cape question. I don't know where they got the questions really. All right, so if we look at it, in the key, you should see that there are different vegetation, right? So in your key on this map, what you're seeing here, things to note, you see in the yellow. So first to begin, Mapen is a limestone map, as you see in all those areas that are covered with, like, white, usually gives us that idea. Also Jamaica maps. I don't have a particular year for this map because I think I don't have the actual year for this map. I think it's this map is the Cape map that I'm using. I'm not too sure for Csec if there is a Mapen map on the Csec questions on that file. Someone can check it through and see if there is. But I know from 2022, 2023, all the way down to 2014, those are the maps that I covered in detail. Neither of those maps were a Mapen map. So they could bring a Mapen map, very well bring one, right? So let us look at this. So if they're asking you about vegetation, right, what you need to know about vegetation. So if you look in your key, so I was just saying that first to begin, you need to know two things about your map. The location, so Mapen is in Jamaica, so you'll should have an idea of where that map is taken from. So it's a Jamaica map, and the Jamaica map, usually Jamaica maps tells us that it is consists of limestone on the map, so that is one thing you should pay attention to. Therefore, you should see that you will have underground drainage, and you would see that on the map as well. So if you look at that area that is green in the center, that green is woodland, and you will see that there are rivers that just start and then they disappear. So you know that they go underground, so that is disappearing streams. So we're looking at the first question that says describe. Somebody want to type in the chat. So describe, or if you are able to copy and paste the question in the chat for me, Ciara, from the group chat, and post it here, it will be easier for people to follow. So describe the distribution of vegetation in the area of the map extract south of Northern 41. So Northern the northern lines are your horizontal lines that extend towards the north. So the first thing that you will do is locate the northern line, and then you go to the key and you look at the type of distribution north of northern south of northern 41. So it's south of northern 41. Sure. So you can type it out. Describe the distribution of the vegetation in the area of the map extract south of northern 41. So you locate 41 and then you locate all of the type of vegetation. Remember, when you're looking at vegetation, two things that you need to know. Vegetation is either natural or cultivated. What is natural vegetation? Natural vegetation is vegetation that grows on the land, right? It is not cultivated, it is not planted, it is not the vegetation that you grow. So natural vegetation will be your forests, mangrove vegetation, right? You have trees and scrub. You also have natural vegetation, like savannas and woodlands. All of those are natural vegetation. And then you have your cultivated vegetation. So cultivated vegetation would be things like a banana, sugarcane, citrus, coconut, tobacco. So if you look in the key, you would be able to identify those types of cultivated vegetation. So on the map, they just ask you vegetation broadly. They didn't say to identify between natural and cultivated. So you can just describe that. And distribution basically is the location or where this vegetation, sorry, is located on the map. So if you look at the yellow areas, you will see that there is a river flowing through that area, main river, the Rio Minho River. So one of the things that you can note is that in terms of the sugarcane plantation, it is distributed around the Rio Minho River, the main river. You also have roads that run through that area. So you have roads that are in yellow, which are other roads, which means that it is minor. And then you have some class C roads in that area as well. So in terms of distribution and the sugarcane, you also will notice in terms of vegetation, you have that woodland area, and that woodland area, you are seeing that the woodland area, you do not have any major roads running through that area. You have motorable track and footpaths, and then you have some streams, and it says the cockpit lands, and we know that cockpit country is a name given to Jamaica limestone cockpit cast feature. So that is in terms of the woodland. So you're seeing woodland, you describe the distribution of that woodland area. You are also seeing mangroves along the coast. So that is another distribution. So there are mangroves along the coast. So if you want to, people could type the answers in the chat so that you will have it. Right? So mangroves are located along the coast. You can see that as well. There are some pastures as well, pasture areas that are also on the flat area. So you can know that flat areas of the map, right? And you also have mixed and scattered cultivation as well, right? If you look at the woodland area, you will notice that the contours in that area are a bit steeper than the sugarcane growing areas, or where you have the pastures, which would be more flat, right? You discussed that the river, it's located around the river in terms of its distribution along the coast, right? Where the land is gentle, you have that mangrove vegetation, and then pasture as well as on the flat area. And then you have the woodland that is mostly in the center, where you have the absence of roads, major roads. You just have tracks, and it is steeper. You all got that? The other question is, describe the distribution of agricultural land use in the area of the map extract. Yeah. Good, Leo. So describe the distribution of agricultural land use in the area of the map extract north of Northern 41. So if you look at north of Northern 41, right, you are looking for the agricultural land use. So when you look at the pattern north of it, so remember, anytime you have a question like that, right, you are paying attention to the land the agricultural land use. So agricultural is cultivated. So that would be your sugar cane. You would see north of Northern 41, you have sugar cane. Um, you have mixed and scattered cultivation in between there. There is pasture. So pasture is like for livestock rearing. So I don't want you to list pasture, right? Remember pasture, when you hear the term pasture, that is for livestock rearing. So that would be for farming of animals. So do not include that. You're going to include your mixed and scattered cultivation. You have sugar cane and let me see what else I'm seeing here. I think that is mainly what I'm seeing. So in terms of that, mainly those two agricultural land use, right? You have to describe the vegetation. So the agricultural land use, sorry. So you would see that sugarcane again is mainly grown where you have that river, the major river, the Rio Mijo River, and you will notice that it is on the flat or gentle areas, right, around that 38, 40-meter contour line, whereas the mixed and scattered cultivation, you will see it's right on the outskirts of the steep land or the woodland area. So you have mixed and scattered cultivation around the 200, 100 contour line, and it's in little pockets. So you have the sugarcane, which is also not evenly distributed. Neither of them are evenly distributed. Neither the mixed and scattered cultivation and sugarcane. Right? The next question: three possible reasons for the dominance of the cultivation found in the southwestern area of the map. So the southwestern area of the map, so when you're looking at the map, they ask you for three possible reasons for the dominance of the type of cultivation found in the southwest area of the map. So the southwest area of the map is predominantly sugarcane cultivation. And the reason for the dominance of the cultivation in this area would be, of course, one, the river again influences it. Two, it's on very flat land. So you would see contours are very low, like from 20. You have spot heights of 17, 16, 20. So the relief of the land is gentle or flat. You have access, as you have several, you have a class B road, class B road, and class C roads that run through the area. Also, you have settlements or towns nearby that would provide labor. So you have, if we're looking at that three possible reason, there is one, one, there is the labor supply as there are settlements nearby. the sugarcane cultivation area. So there are settlements. So there's a savanna settlement there, and then there's also by Broken Bank. You will also see, remember to give examples, the Rio Minho River that will provide water, a source of irrigation for the sugarcane. Then the access to class B and C roads, which will help to transport the sugarcane to the various center of export. So you will notice in that southwest portion of the map as well, right above it, you will see that there is right at the side of it, there is the rail tunnel to the east of it, I should say. Right? So the sugarcane cultivation to the east. So there's also the railway tunnel. There are roads which gives you accessibility and transport to send the sugarcane to the actual market. Right? For three types of economic activity. So economic activities, right? Primary, think of primary, secondary, tertiary in terms of your economic activity in the area of the east west of Eastern 41. So three types of economic activity in the area west, right? So remember WE. So we west of Eastern 41. Is that in the area west of Eastern 41? Eastern, I think that's supposed to be Eastern 41. So if you look, there are several types of economic activity. So you would see there's a agricultural station. There are several factories in the area. So factories, you have quarrying as well. You would see a quarrying. Remember to give grid referencing to locate it, right? So that is in 2643. So you would have quarrying as an economic activity. You have an aluminum storage and shipment wharf, which means that you have mining of aluminum, right? You have agricultural activity because you have an agricultural station. You also see an airstrip. You have factories, and then you have several areas of factories. I guess it's near to the sugarcane, so they are probably sugarcane cultivation factories to 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 produce sugar, right, from the sugarcane. So those are some of the economic activities that you can find. Then the other question is give reasons to explain the location of economic activities identified. So the type of economic reasons. So energy supply, port facilities, large concentration and size of area. Economic activities is the activities that we use to earn revenue or to make revenue for a country, right? They are classified into three types. Your primary activity, which utilizes the natural resources in its natural state or raw state, so raw materials, right? Then you have the secondary industries where it's processed or converted, manufactured, produced into a new product or finished good. And then, of course, tertiary would be services. It caters to the needs of people in the society, right? So this next question, it says, give reason to explain the location of the types of economic activities. So after you listed, let us say quarry, you listed the factories that you saw, agricultural activities, aluminum market, aluminum store. Here you have aluminum storage and shipment wharf, so you know that there's some form of extraction of alumina. So in that case, you have to explain what might be some of the reasons for their location. So one, let us say if you look at the quarrying, of course, the location is that the raw material in terms of quarrying, you find that in highland areas or upland areas, right? In terms of the factories, they're going to be located close to the raw material site as well, so that they can minimize transportation costs, and also close to water supply is very important if you are looking at production or converting the sugar cane into sugar, right? That is factories. In terms of, what's the other thing that we saw there? The factories, right, has to be close to an energy source, close to water in terms of your industry. So then you have aluminum. You would see the shipment wharf. That is the location because they want to transport or ship the aluminum out of the country. Then you have, with reference to specific example, describe two types of settlement patterns shown. So what are settlement patterns? Again, you have three main types of settlement patterns. You have nucleated, you have dispersed, and you have linear. Nucleated patterns, remember, you will often see it in your key as built up area. So on the map, you will see that there's some red spots. That spread that is nucleated. You know that is a built up area. So nucleated are where the buildings, the settlements are clustered together, right? And remember, settlements that are clustered are nucleated. So you have the town of Mapen that is nucleated. You have Old Harbor that is also nucleated, and the area near Savannah. Then you have your linear patterns of settlement, which follows the settlement is located along the roads or the rivers. So you have areas like Trenchtown, right? You have Curator Hill, you have your pen. Just look for those areas where you see the little red dots follow along the river or the road. And then you have disperse. Um, and disperse is where you have the settlements located far away from each other. So there is no clustering at all. So you tend to find that in more highland areas of high relief. Um, so whether we are seeing this space on this map, right? So you are seeing this space around very close to the cockpit lands, right? But you will notice it's along that little road, right? But higher up, you see that you have one dot there, one dot there. So you look and see what are the most dominant patterns on the map in terms of the settlement patterns, right? Then you have explained the distribution of settlements and how they are affected by the relief. So relief of the land, you will notice that Mapan, right, where Mapan is located, Mapan is on the, it's more to the northwest of the map. So that Mapan area, it is also on that area where you have a lot of mix and scattered. So the area there, you will see it is flat, right? More gentle. Old Harbor as well. It's away from the steep areas. It is more on the flat. So relief, the nucleated settlement patterns, or where you have clustering of the settlements. They are where the land is flat. You have settlements that are located along the road, right? That give you that linear settlement pattern. So remember that is distribution as well. They are located along the road, right? And of course, there's the absence of vegetation in the woodland or steep highland areas. In terms of drainage, you will notice where the rivers are as well, that Rio Minho River, you will notice that is like the valley. So you have that river flowing through Mapan and Curato Hill or Trenchtown, that area. So on either side, the river is running through. So the river, you have settlement located on either side of the river, that river. Also, you see that there are settlements are located or rivers running through those areas where you have the settlements located. Describe the location of the built-up area of Old Harbor Bay. So the built-up location of Old Harbor Bay, if you were to describe it, you will see that it is near to the coast, right, where it's flat. So you'll notice that it's near to the coast where the land is flat. You have, I think that is coral. So it has protection of coral reefs, right? It is very close to the bay, so it has a marine advantage. There's also the Class B road that is running through B or C. I think C, Class C road that is running through that area. And you will also see the power transmission line. So you have a power station as well in terms of the location. So the location of that built up area, remember, Old Harbor is between Eastern's 39 and Northern 39, that area there, right? So it's along the coast. It is located right between the Old Harbor Bay. There are coral reefs that adds as protection. It is right to the outskirts of the pasture and the sugarcane cultivation. You have water supply that runs through it. There's a river, right? And then there are roads. Yes, it's close to, well, you want to say that there are rivers like the Boas Gully. You will notice that there's a river close by. So that will act as a water supply. They ask for the drainage pattern 3041. So that pattern 3041. It's a dendritic drainage pattern. 3041, you have a dendritic drainage pattern. And why we say it's a dendritic drainage pattern, it is because you have that tree-like pattern where the tributaries are joining the main river at a 45 degrees angle. And then there's describe one piece of evidence that suggests that the limestone is a major rock type in the area covered by the map extract. And one of the major pieces of evidence is that you are seeing where the rivers are actually flowing into that woodland area, but they stop, which means that it disappears underground. So that is evidence of the underground drainage, or the rivers have disappeared. That surface river, the surface rivers that you are seeing, they have now disappeared underground, right? Or another thing, you will see the cockpit lands and cockpit there, and that is a major evidence, as the name of Jamaica cockpit country, right, forms as a result of carbonation taking place, right, to give you cockpit country. So that is one of the major things where the rivers, they tend to disappear underground. You can see that in terms of where the rivers start. So that is some of the questions that we have for that particular map, right? Do you all want to go through some of the other map questions? So I went through most of those questions already in terms of what we did. We can look at 2019, which is the map of Pinal, Trinidad. So let me change this map. So things to remember as we on maps, things to remember. So remember, most times they're going to ask you about the settlement patterns. They're going to ask you about the drainage. And when they say to state, you are not just writing one word. They want you to actually write a short or brief, not explanation or description, but you have to outline, a short outline when they ask you to state 4 drainage patterns or state the type of settlement patterns that you see. They want you to give a brief outline of it for state, not just a one word answer, right? That is something that I came across in the actual reports, that they mentioned that students were writing one word responses. So that is something they do not want to see. So please make sure and so let's look at it. Okay, so this is the Pinal map here. Okay, sure. What questions you want me to answer? So let's go through some key things that you all should probably know for your map work. To remember for map work, remember the drainage patterns, right? They're going to ask you about that. Your tree types, you have dendritic. I'm going it over again. Dendritic, it's that tree-like pattern that forms on uniform rock, right? Where the tributaries join the river at a 45-degree angle. Then you have trellis, where the rivers are joining the main river at a 90 degrees angle, and they are formed where you have alternating bands of hard and softer rock. And then you have radial, which are formed on conical hills or volcanic landscape where the rivers are flowing from a concentric or central point down the sides of the river, right? Other things that they will ask you, they can ask you about settlement, and settlement in terms of distribution or characteristics, like how they would ask you characteristics of features of drainage. So for features of drainage, so remember, I always say you look for the direction of flow of the drainage, where you will look for the source, that's where it begins, and then where it ends would be the mouth. You look for the type of drainage pattern. Sometimes on maps you have more than one type of drainage pattern. You can have two drainage patterns sometimes on a map. You might see radial and you might see dendritic. So definitely look at the drainage pattern. You can look at the density in terms of it being, if you have a high drainage density, you will see that there are several rivers on the areas. Low drainage density, for example, on this particular map, there's a low drainage density. If you look at the spinal map, it is poorly drained, right? Because there's a lagoon. So where you have lagoons, swamps, estuaries, mangroves, you tend to see that area is not properly well drained, right? Low drainage density. Drainage density can be linked to well drained or poorly drained areas, right? So if you want, those are 4 characteristics that you can list, or 4 features. In terms of settlements, they're going to ask you distribution of settlements, or they can ask you form. When they talk about form, they're basically talking about the patterns in terms of settlement patterns. So they might ask you where settlements are distributed. And when they discuss distribution, remember, they want you to look at the actual location where the settlements are located on the map. Where are you finding these settlements located? Are they along the rivers? Are they along the roads? Are they along flat land? Are they along the coastal areas? And each of those are also reasons that you could give. So the location, right? Settlements are located near to the rivers because the rivers act as a water supply, domestic use, agricultural use in terms of irrigation. Settlements are located near to roads or transportation, roads as they act as a form of transportation, right? Communication, accessibility to areas. The settlements again being located along coast because the coastal area is flat, right? You have that marine advantage of the coast being on flat land. So we said coastal area along roads or rivers, you find that water supply. In terms of distribution, you can also mention, if you look and you see that you have dispersed settlement in highland areas or steep areas, you can suggest that the steeper areas is void of settlements, as it is difficult to build on those areas that are steep, right? Sometimes you can mention soil fertility if you see rivers as well, and agriculture growing in that areas where the settlements are. So that is settlements. They can also ask you in terms of drainage and settlements, and they will go on to ask you sometimes about cultivation, in terms of cultivation, again, in terms of distribution of the crop. So remember, if they ask you about distribution of a particular crop or vegetation, they're going to ask you about vegetation, whether vegetation is natural or cultivated, right? If they ask you, or they can be general and just say describe the vegetation. Natural, specifically, you're referring to your naturally occurring vegetation, like your forests, your mangroves, right? Savannas, woodlands, and you look to see where they are located. So normally where you have wetland or mangroves, maybe you would see a swamp area, a lagoon area. Woodlands are usually in steep areas, so that is where the distribution are, right? Lagoons more on the flat areas, closer to the sea, at the mouth of the river. Sorry, at the mouth of the river, right? You have that lagoon area. You have mangrove vegetation as well. Then cultivated vegetation like a coconut or sugar cane, you would see, of course, they're on flat land, near water supply, near roads for transport. So remember those points. Then they can ask you about, I saw questions on roads, like the road density on the map. So of course, same thing applies. You look at to see, are there differences in the types of roads? So meaning different classes. A class A road will be located differently from a class B, or track and footpaths, or other roads which are usually in yellow. Those are in highland areas, where your roads will be mainly along the coastline, especially if it's our Caribbean countries along the coastline, because that is where the land is most flat, it's gentlest, right? Gentle, right? Or flat. So remember that in terms of roads, you talk about density. If you see a lot of roads, you would see high connectivity, a lot of roads in nucleated areas, right? Where you have those built up areas. On the map, you'll see that pink areas tend to have more networks of roads, as opposed to those areas in the rural areas. You might only have access to tracks or footpaths, or class C roads. So they can ask you about vegetation, agriculture, right? Agriculture, that will come under vegetation, cultivated. They can ask you about the roads. They can ask you about in terms of drainage and settlements. What else do they ask you in terms of those last set of questions? Let me just make sure that I'm telling you all everything in those last set of questions. So road density, yeah, they'll tell you about road density, or they will ask you about land uses. So remember, land uses can be industrial. So for example, on the Trinidad maps, they tend to ask you about land use. You see oil refinery, or quarrying is also a type of land use. Agricultural land Agricultural activities, also a land use. Settlement, that is used for both commercial and residential, is also a land use. So they will ask you how land is used. Those land uses questions tend to come really often. And they also ask you to link those things with relief. How relief influences the land use. So you might have to see agricultural land is on the flatter land, whereas you might have quarrying in the upland, highland, steep areas. So you look for that, right? They love to link relief. So remember, relief is just a change in elevation of the slope, and will link your relief to whatever they ask you, whether it's land use or land use, or sometimes they ask you in terms of settlements. Make sure you link those points. Okay, so Aisha, you asked me to go through some human geography papers. What in human geography you want to look at? Do you all want me to go through the Pinal map? Okay, so I'll go through the Pinal map. So the questions, this is 2019. The Pinal map is 2019. So I'm not too sure if you all have the digital copies of the map. And it is 2019. So someone can post the questions so I wouldn't have to go back and forth between the screens. All right. So the 2019 question, the first question is grid question. As usual, they're going to bring grid references. They're going to bring your bearings. Just remember how to do it when you're doing grid referencing. It's your easting before your northings. Your easting, it always makes an L, so that is your vertical, then your horizontal, right? So easting is the vertical line that increases towards the east, and northings are your horizontal line, and they increase towards the north. In terms of the question, so the first question on the map is, somebody want to help me and just bring up the question? Okay, I think I have it here. State the grid reference. State the six-figure grid reference of the minor trig station near Nodding 23. So, of course, the first thing that you need to locate is Nodding 23. So, Nodding 23 is here, and you have to locate the minor trig station. Remember, a trig station is a triangle with a dot. The minor is upside down, the major is the normal triangle. So the answer for that was 683242. The second question is, what is the compass direction of the oil field from the trigonometrical station? So you're going to look for, of course, you always put your compass direction from, on, from. So here you are going to put your compass on the minor trigonometrical station, and then you find the direction of the oil field. So your compass direction, right, that compass is going to be on the minor trig because that is from, and then you find the direction of the oil field. So the oil field direction from that trigonometrical station is west northwest. Remember to give your compass direction fixed to the 16-point compass unless they say otherwise. I've noticed again in the reports that they give that they want you to give it to the 16-point compass, right? They want you to be very accurate. Two types of vegetation, and here they ask you natural. Remember, natural along easting 63. So easting 63 would be a column, right? Eastern 63 would be the column. So not a row. So this is Eastern 63 here. You're seeing it. So this is 63 here. Eastern is vertical, right? So it's along this line. What type of vegetation can you see? So natural vegetation, remember, natural is what naturally grows out of the land. It's not what you plant. So that will be your forest. You have forest here and mangrove. Forest and mangroves. So that is 2019. For CND, that is bearing. I am unable to measure that and the distance because I didn't have the actual physical map to measure off of it, right? So we'll move to E, and E was a big error, and they omitted the question totally that year because they named they gave the grid reference for the question wrong. They actually stated the northing before the easting, so of course that was wrong. But if you change it around and you put the eastings before the northing, so 6723 would have been flat, then 6623 would have been gentle, right? Or moderate. So you could put 25 feet is gentle, 50 feet is moderate, and then 100 feet contour would have been steep. F, they ask you to identify the type of settlement in each grid square. So if you look at 60, 26, 60, 26, 6026 is forest, 6926 is sugarcane, and sorry, what am I saying? It's settlement, sorry, it's dispersed. 6026 is dispersed, 6926 is linear, and 6824 is nucleated. And then they ask you to state 4 characteristics of the drainage. So the 4 characteristics of the drainage is they wanted you to look at this map. You're not really seeing a clear drainage pattern on the map, but I would say that it is dendritic. But of course, you have to make mention that this area is poorly drained, right? You will see that there is the Oropouche Lagoon. So that is one of the characteristics. There is the Oropouche Lagoon, which influences the drainage pattern here, right? So there's a low drainage density, and you are seeing that there are areas of wetland or swamp, right, surrounding that lagoon area. The last question was to describe the influence of the rice cultivation. So if you look at here, the rice is grown, of course, on the flat land surrounding the lagoon because, of course, rice needs that swamp or wet condition to grow. So swampland, right? So you would see the rice is grown on the areas around the lagoon where it is actually flat. Also, you would notice that the rice is growing close to that area, and there are some rivers that connects to that the lagoon. So again, irrigation. You also have transport in terms of the roads being right around the areas where you have the rice cultivation, or close to the areas that are cultivated for rice, and also settlements also close by, and they would of course act as a labor supply for that um, rice cultivation in the area. So those are the main factors. So that is 2019. So somebody wanted to do some questions on some human questions. Let me see if I can get those questions. And I think you should have some of these already, you know. Okay. So let me share the next set of questions now. So these are the economic activity questions that I have. So you all will see here secondary industries are those industries which process, remember, refine, assemble, or transform the raw material, right, in some way into more valuable products, or it is a processing or conversion, right, manufacturing or production into a finished good. So that is secondary. Second question is state 3 ways let me go back up. Right, an example of secondary is food processing, that is with Singapore and Trinidad, and then you have garment manufacturing in Hong Kong. Those are the case studies. Remember to revise those, right? 3 ways in which the secondary industry or industries can benefit the development of your country. So it will be provides jobs for low-skilled labor, earn foreign revenue when the raw materials are exported, and local manufacturing reduces imports and increases exports. Right? Crystal is asking for me to go through gradient. Okay, I will go through that in a minute. Right, state 2 economic activities may influence the location of a secondary industry. So this is on secondary activities. The cost of labor. Right, so you have here the cost of labor, compared to other countries, and then the economic incentive from government, such as exemption of tax on duty. So that is one of the major things. So people are going to locate an industry where you have already supply of labor, right? So if you look at the oil and gas industry in Trinidad and Tobago, a lot of the employment comes from people who are located in that south region very close to the companies, right? And also if there are tax exemptions, then that is another incentive that will influence the location of the industry. So three policies that governments may use to promote sustainable development of primary economic activity. So remember, a primary economic activity would involve things like agriculture or fishing. So you will see you can apply this across to those type of economic activities. So one, things like zoning of forests. So you have maybe the protection of certain types of trees or forested areas, like creating natural reserves or protected areas. Also enforcing the laws that will prevent over harvesting of the trees, right, or deforestation of the hillsides. So enforcement of the laws that are in place already, right? If it's fishing where you have an overfishing problem, so you create again seasons for different types of fish. So you might have a particular season where you can fish, and then you close that season when there's no fishing to, of course, allow for the breeding of the fishes to take place again. Especially, you also want to put a limit on the size of the fish that they can harvest, right? You don't want to constantly be fishing and then you are taking all of the juveniles, which are the babies, the younger bred fish that do not repopulate. So you put policies and laws in place that would prevent fishermen from catching particular size of fish. You ban illegal practice. You ban or put a ban on certain types of practices like trawling, which is the scraping of the bottom of the ocean, right, with these large huge neck because they're going to pick up everything. So you ban trawling, dynamite fishing, destructive fishing practicing, like also um, gill nets. So you want to ban those things. You create, again, natural reserves, management reserves that would protect where you can fish and not fish. So there might be certain areas that you protect totally that you will not be able to fish. So you will see here, prohibit the sale of conch and lobster below a certain size and give them a chance to mature. So that also applies for fish, any type of fisheries. They went into now discussing any type of economic activity for a country like fishing, forestry, and mining, right? And remember, most time they ask you to choose one. So in this case, you're looking at fishing. What are some challenges? So one, you have competition, and this is with respect to the case study of Belize. You're going to have competition from right. I'm seeing a comment. Right. So conservation areas, yeah. Those would come under like management zone, right? Or protected areas like the Caroni Swamp, right? People are not supposed to fish, right? Also designating a marine park. But remember, a marine park, you might still be able to fish. So you want to say that you have certain zones set up where they will be able to fish and where they will not be able to fish. Just to know that. Competition from the international factory and fishing ships. So competition is a major thing when we are looking at economic activities in the Caribbean. We're going to have competition with the international market, right? You will see the species most valuable commercial species for export, such as marlin and grouper, in terms of fishery resources and tuna, they are threatened and extinct by overfishing. So that is a problem to the industry, right? And if they continue to fish them, of course, they will not have enough for the future. So that is a major challenge, and that is why they need to set up those regulations and laws or management zones, right? Shrimp export is very profitable. Remember, Belize has the largest, one of the largest in terms of aquaculture, for mariculture, sorry, in terms of shrimp farming. They also do shrimp farming, right? But when you have destructive practice like shrimp trawling, and we also do shrimp trawling in Trinidad in the Gulf, right? It catches too many young fish, right? And that is a major problem. So you don't want to have that taking place. Well, economic activity, right? Actions that involve the production, distribution, and conservation of goods and services at all levels within a society. So I like to say that it is the way in which the country earns economic revenue or earn revenue for the country. So again, this is a common question under economic activity. One one type of economic activity that you have studied, describe three challenges with it. So, for example, with agriculture, this is under agriculture. If we're using agriculture, what are some of the three changes that took place? So, one is the change in preferential trade agreements for UK, right, and Europe, when we would have shipped sugar during that transatlantic slave period, right? There were preferential agreements to take our sugar, but after, of course, freedom and emancipation, independence, then, of course, a lot of our preferential agreements to those markets were lost, and we are now competing with their markets. So that is why sugar and banana became very unprofitable in the Caribbean, and we no longer really produce sugar because it's unprofitable. In terms of that, where you lost, you know, markets in terms of sugarcane, people also lose their jobs. So unemployment in the agriculture industry rose as a result of the closure of these sugarcane cultivation um, estates and industries, and also a lot of the sugarcane before they closed down, they were mechanized, meaning they used more machinery. So that mechanization also led to the closure of the the um, the industry, and of course downsizes in employment. Agriculture is no longer the largest or most important contributor to GDP in most countries. You have no more residential, manufacturing, and tourism uses, right, that are competing for land use. So, because of manufacturing is becoming a big thing and tourism in the Caribbean, that is a competing land use, right? So, I guess this is the same thing in terms of fishing. They talk about overfishing is a problem, right? Grouper, some of those fish species are becoming extinct They talk about the shrimp trawling, and it is difficult to control foreign-owned ships from Asia, which compete for Caribbean fish stock. So they are coming in the Caribbean and also fishing, right? So agricultural challenges, we have prime agricultural land now under intense competition by other land uses such as manufacturing, tourist accommodation, and residential development. Preferential trade agreements. We just talk about the banana and sugarcane cultivation markets being lost because we no longer have those markets in Europe. And then agriculture is also seeing a shortage of labor supply as most people now, with the closure of sugarcane, most young people don't want to work in the sugarcane or agriculture industry anymore. They find jobs in tourism or in manufacturing or the service industry, right? So, in terms of economic activity here, given economic activity, primary is agriculture, fishing, lumber, all of those would come under agriculture, quarrying, mining, right? So secondary would be food processing, right? Or textile manufacturing. This is another question on economic activity. Again, it's basically the same thing here. They're asking you but now to describe two factors that influence the location of the economic activity. And again, they always ask you to choose. So this is fishing in Belize, right? Factors that contribute to the location of that economic activity. Remember, Belize has the largest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere, so it makes it ideal because of that barrier reef. The coral reef ecosystem is going to, of course, foster fisheries, right? So it's ideal for the fishing industry, the barrier reef. There are corals, fish, and crustacean. They have a thriving marine environment. So the fishing grounds in Belize is very productive, right? Also, the location of the communities, they have what we call cooperatives where the fishermen come together and pool resources so that they can meet the demand for the fisheries on the world market in terms of export and also to sustainably manage the marine stock and also to maintain the profitability, right? So this was a question, I think, how tourism industry has been affected by the recent global recession. And I think, Nisira, you asked me about this question, right? The global recession. 3 points to include. So you would see that tourists tourists decreased by 25% or more in some Caribbean areas, decreased profit for small businesses and local hotel industry. So with the recession, people have less disposable income, which means that traveling, right, may not be prioritized. So that is why you saw a decrease in tourist arrivals in many of the country. Then you have the proportion of tourists choosing ship vacations, meaning cruise ship became more popular, right, during that time because cruise ship destinations it is cheaper to go on a cruise because you see more countries, right? They spend more time in a country than the a short time. So they don't have to pay for food, they don't have to pay for accommodation. All of that is catered on ship. In light of the recession, North America consumers are now promoting package tours and all-inclusive um, resorts so that you can plan ahead of time and pay over time. So again, some of the same questions, remember, they are repeated. Food processing, why is food processing important in the Caribbean? Remember, this is also under economic activities. So food processing is important. It provides employment, right, in the manufacturing industries. It increases the value of agricultural export. So we can now produce more and export more of our produce, right? So you will have now, when you talk about less imports, if you are producing your own food, and if you are exporting, you are now getting revenue, right? Food processing decreases the import bill, so we don't have to import as much, and it helps to create export processing zones that help industrialize the islands. So that's a repeated question. These are repeated questions again. So they talk about government policies as another factor that influence the development of fishing in Belize. They have promoted aquaculture in terms of mariculture, where they implemented these huge um, areas for shrimp farm along the coast, making it one of the most profitable areas of shrimp farming in the world, right? So challenges. So challenges again, well, Asia shrimp farms is competition is competition for sorry competition for those in the Caribbean like Belize that are producing shrimp as well through the aquaculture shrimp farming. Trawling also damages the seabed, right, as it catch the very young fish and they do not give them size to mature for commercial use. This particular one, in terms of describe two factors that influence the location of a specific economic activity, and in this case, they chose Point Lisas, which is oil and natural gas, right? So again, in Trinidad and Tobago, right, we have methanol production, right, that we do from natural gas. And of course, because natural gas is the raw material of Trinidad and Tobago that is readily available, it's our main GDP earner. And natural gas, you have that gas being found offshore or on land, and it is readily available. So you would see here the raw material is available for methanol production. It needs a coastal location in order for it to be exported and for it to be taken in the tankers in terms of it when it's time for it to be shipped, right? So this is a little picture of that. Challenges in terms of natural gas. You would see here natural gas is a non-renewable resource, which means that it is not um, replenishable. It's non-replenishable, which means that it can eventually run out or become extinct. So you don't want to use it faster, don't want to use it or put too much strain on the resource. And you must also have other source of revenue, right? So you would see here ongoing pressure from the world government bodies to reduce the use of fossil fuels, and this is in light of climate change, right? And the greenhouse gases. Remember, CO2 is a greenhouse gas. So y'all, that now becomes, um, a problem in terms of the greenhouse gases, right? So that is a challenge because if they continue to put out these bans or pressures, then of course we're going to lose revenue as people move to alternative. Right here, they talk about this is the secondary in terms of Singapore or Hong Kong, right? We did Singapore. So that is basically it in terms of the human, the human, um, the human topics. Somebody asked me to go to gradient. So what is gradient? When you're looking at gradient, when you're looking at gradient, remember gradient is the vertical difference in height over the horizontal distance. So it is your high point, right? You're taking away your low point from your high point. That is going to give you the difference in height along the slope. So remember, you usually locate gradient along a slope. So it's gradient along a slope. So you're going to have the high point or the highland and then the lowland area. Right along that slope, what you're going to do, you're going to take away the lowest point from the highest point. That is going to give you the vertical difference in height. So let me share that with you. So if you go to www.geophysicsc.com, you shall find that there. Difference in height, so vertical difference in height over horizontal distance, rise over run, right? So in this case, you have 2 points, point A and point B. Point A, right? So point A is 50, which is 50 meters above sea level. Sometimes they can give you the coast, which is 0, right? On the coast, sometimes they tell you to the coast, that is 0. So remember that is 0 if they didn't give it to you and they tell you it's at the coast. So point B is 250. So in this case, to find the vertical difference in height, it's going to be 250 minus 50, which is 200. So that gives you the rise or the vertical difference in height. Then you have to find the distance between A and B, right? The distance between A and B, right? So the distance between A and B, and that is how you measure distance. If it's a straight line, they can tell you it's a straight line. You mark off where A, the point that they give you for A on the map, and then that point that they give you for B. And then you measure that distance, right? That distance between A and B, and then you put it on your scale, the linear scale on the map, to get the actual distance. So you will see here, use the scale on the map to measure the horizontal distance from A to B, right? So if you don't know that, then you could go back and click to review how to do it, right? So if it is 3 kilometers, right, and your height is in meters, remember you need to work in the same height. So to convert kilometers on the scale to meters, you multiply by 1,000, right? So 1,000 by 3, multiply that by 1,000, so you know that it is 3,000. So now you have your difference in height, which is 200 over your horizontal distance, which is 3,000. And then you have to make this a ratio. In order to make it a ratio, it means that you have to convert your numerator to 1. And whatever you do on the numerator, you also have to do at on the denominator. So it be 200 divided by 200, then 3,000 divided by 200. And you will see that gives you 1 over 15. A gradient is always expressed as a ratio. So you have to write it 1 to 15. Everybody understand that? Okay, so I think I'm going to stop for now. I hope that they will give you all the paper. You're welcome. Um, I think you will have extra paper you can ask, but you can work with it. We will have string to give you all, just in case they don't give you all tomorrow. Well, that is for my students, right? So work with your geometry pan, work with your strings, work with a geometry pan for your protractor, the string to measure your distances, a long ruler because you don't know how long the length would be, color pencils in case they give you a grid and you have to replicate it. You'll remember to work with a full geometry pan, and I wish you all the best tomorrow. Students in my class who on the live, you all can contact me in the group chat and I will send whatever you all need. Okay, bye. You're welcome.